Welcome to the third episode of Queer Onda El Paso. Today, we'll be talking about all of the things that are Thanksgiving and holiday related in our families. We're calling it Chill and Grace. I have with me our old friends, Izzy.
Hi.
And Ceci.
Hello.
Who, actually, they used to call me and Ceci Will and Grace back in the day a long time because that fit perfectly. And Izzy is probably a great Jack.
I would say so.
Anyway, but this has nothing to do with that TV show. This has to do about maintaining your chill during the Thanksgiving holiday. So, you guys, you know that it's a little early in the season to be talking about the holidays, but as our episodes drop on the 15th of each month, you know, Thanksgiving is just around the corner.
Yes, it is.
And, you know, it is one of the most traveled holidays of the entire year. So, what is the unique perspective for queer people that are either coming home for the holidays or accepting family into their homes for the holidays has always been something that's been just part of our culture and how we handle things. And one of the things I remember is that if you went out to the bars at all, the night before Thanksgiving is the busiest night of the year for all of the gay bars in El Paso. And of course the joke is because they have to get away from their family after 10 minutes of being with them. And well, that's not exactly true. I think there's some unique challenges. Tell me a little bit about your all's experience with the holidays. And Ceci, being our straight person on staff, has her unique experience, which, you know, it doesn't really matter because family's family, however you look at it. So tell me.
I mean, I've got my Mexican cultural aspect of it where, you know, we have your tias who you love and adore, and, you know, you're always voluntold to do things, and no matter how old you are, you have to go and do it. And, you know, it's just, even when you're dealing with your own families and your own children and things like that, which, you know, it's a stressful time. It's a stressful time, and I think in every culture and in every, you know, avenue that you take it. Izzy?
Yeah, well, with my family's a little bit kind of on the, a lot on the dysfunctional side. So we all had our separate ways that we went during the holidays. But for me, that made it a lot easier, but it made it necessary that I had the queer clubs to go to and to hang out with people at the clubs. While everybody went with their families, there was always a faction of people that were at the bars early and that stayed until way late. And that was a necessity because I wasn't sitting at home with my family having cocoa and wrapping gifts and things like that. So for me, it was an essential to have some kind of cohesive celebration or acknowledgement that this was a special time.
Was it because you were, because you've been out, and I know when I can speak for myself, when I was in the closet, I mean, I would just watch the clock and wait for Thanksgiving dinner to be over because I wanted to head out and hang out with my friends and go to the bars and feel like I could be myself. Which leads to the question, you know, were you able to be yourself in your family dynamic?
No, not at all. We didn't have a whole lot of heavy conversation, and when we did, it never focused on me and say whom I'm dating or how my friends are. I think the underlying tone within my family was that, there's that subject that, you know, we're not going to talk about, right?
It's like actively avoiding talking about it.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was unrequited tension or something like that with my family.
I remember very distinctly my oldest brother, who's 8 years older than I am, would come in for the holidays, and it was the first thing is, are you going to bring a girlfriend over to Thanksgiving? Oh, don't you have a girlfriend? Don't you have? And I finally told him one time without necessarily coming out, I said, no, I don't. There isn't going to be a girlfriend. And he says, you mean no girls? And I said, none. And that was the end of that, but it sure made for a very uneasy dessert, let me tell you that. and I couldn't wait to get out of there, you know. And you know, I mean, most of my family, I think, kind of knew at that time. But like I said, it really has to do with the we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s. And things were different back then. But every family is different. I think one of the things that we reached out to Emergence Healthcare and her counselor and the counselor Lupita Peña, who talked about that, how, you know, every family dynamic is different. And so here's a little bit of what she had to say about that. The holiday season can be triggering for many people. but especially for queer people. In fact, research shows that queer people are more likely to experience symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress during the holidays. Our guest today is Lupita Peña, counselor with Emergence Health Network. Ms. Peña, thank you for talking to Queer Onda El Paso.
Thank you so much for having me.
In your experience, what are some of the unique challenges for LGBTQ people in regards to family gatherings in general this time of year, perhaps some more an emotional stress that they might be feeling? What is your take on that as to why that might be particularly profound for an LGBTQ person?
Right. I think what stands out more than anything else is just that feeling of not feeling included, right? Or not feeling like they are like everyone else in the family. If maybe, as we were talking about earlier, someone hasn't come out yet, right? Some of the questions that they might get, as far as where's your girlfriend, where's your boyfriend, have you not had kids yet, when are you going to get pregnant? Those types of questions are obviously happening more during the holidays because everybody's gathering together, right? And just overall symptoms of anxiety and depression, being around other people, especially right now, is difficult for us. Even though, we're excited to do it again after COVID, just in general, these types of environments do make it difficult for us. And I think that feeling of the possibility of being rejected, I tell people all the time, from the second that we're born, what we need is connection and to feel safe. And so those things definitely would come up, I believe, in the LGBTQ plus community 100%, and especially during these time frames.
Family dynamics are always difficult to navigate. Even not everyone's living a Hallmark movie life. Right. And it becomes particularly isolating, I think, for people that are in the closet in their family. Right. And so maybe the opportunity would exist over a holiday gathering where they ask if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and the queer person might think to themselves, this might be the time for me to clarify. No, I'm not going to have a boyfriend, I'm going to have a girlfriend, or vice versa. Right. How would you recommend or not recommend that we navigate those issues at a family gathering?
Right. The first two things that stand out are, the first and foremost is everybody's different. So their experience is going to be unique to them. You might know your family dynamic, and if you were to say that, it would be okay, and possibly, everybody would, come together during that time frame. Whereas for someone else, that would not be okay, right? And depending on who's there, that's going to be a pretty big issue, and the family dynamics is going to suffer because of that. Or the person is going to suffer because of that due to the family dynamic in the system. So the first thing that I like to say is everybody's different. Their experience is going to be different, so I don't often like to recommend or not recommend. I think it's more about navigating through what evidence they might have to indicate what they're going through, right? And the other just as important thing that I like to look at is safety. Safety's huge, right? So does this person have a safe place to be? You indicated some research at the beginning of the podcast, and it is important to look at, with LGBTQ plus community, we have higher suicide rates, we have higher sexual assault rates, just overall depression and anxiety. So does this person have that safe place to live, to be around these people that they come out to? What is that going to look like for them? So those are the main things that I like to talk about first. And then really, I always like to delve into what's realistic expectations. Our brain likes to go to the worst case scenario, which is understandable. We like to think that helps us expect the worst so that we're prepared for it. That's actually not the case. But we go there first. I like to walk clients through worst case scenario, what those thoughts and feelings are, best case scenario, and then I like to be somewhere in the middle of what's more realistic. But just being able to talk through those. Working on communication skills is huge too. What is this conversation going to look like, right? What things am I going to say? Am I going to prepare? We do a lot of role playing in sessions in general when we're talking about family dynamics. That's one of the big things that we talk about in healthy boundaries, right? So that's something else to consider. What are these conversations going to look like? And then I think it's also important to identify what's your support system looking like in general, right? For all of us. Do you have that, even if it's just one person, right? The more the better, but do you have that one person? Do you have that, maybe they're not your immediate family, they're your chosen family, right? That you're going to be able to go back to if you need to kind of talk about, what happened during Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving. So I think those are all different considerations that I like to think of when it comes to the clinical aspect of it and when someone brings up these issues.
You know, one of the things that I think is challenging for navigating family dynamic, particularly because the holidays bring together family that you don't necessarily see all the time.
Correct.
And so then you have to ask yourself, well, how much of myself do I need to share with my uncle who I see once every 2 years, or that sort of thing. But there is a need for everyone within their family to feel seen and understood. And so sometimes that causes isolation.
Correct.
So how do you navigate feeling isolated, even if you're part of a big family?
Huge family.
And you can, and yet you still feel so very isolated. How would you talk to somebody that's going through that?
I think one of the healthiest things that we can do in those cases, because I think that that's just in general a very big, we might be around 50 people and we feel like we're completely alone. In those cases, obviously, it's very much magnified because that level of rejection is so much higher there, right? I'm not being rejected because of something that I did to you. I'm being rejected because of who I am,
right?
Which is a whole nother level, right? That's just how do you move past that? So I think building healthy self-esteem is imperative. It's so important to really identify with, yes, I want to be seen and heard, but unfortunately, I'm just not going to get that from everybody. And I need to identify the level of importance that means to me, because if I'm spending my energy on whether or not you accept me, then I'm losing a whole lot of energy on whether I'm accepting myself. And being able to build healthy relationships with the people that do accept me, right? And so that's what I would say to that, is identify what that means to you, why it's meaningful to you, right? That this uncle or, this cousin that you never see, what it matters to you, and identify where can I put my energy. Is it important? That doesn't mean that you're not necessarily going to have those conversations. I think that's imperative. But where do I want to really put my energy in this? If they're not accepting of me, then I think I'm going to kind of figure out why that is that it bothers me so much, dig deep in that, and then start really identifying and putting all of my resources, energy, time, and effort into the people that are available to me.
What about the more fundamental relationships in the family dynamic? For example, parents or that sort of thing, where if somebody happens to be lesbian or gay or trans and they're out,
right,
and then they become part of a family gathering over the holidays, but yet some of the family is really not very supportive of that,
right,
or not very helpful, or not necessarily, they don't have to celebrate it, but at the same time they can be somewhat aggressive about it. So what would you recommend for somebody to do when they're faced with that sort of thing within their own family?
Yeah, I feel like really being prepared for that, if possible, right? You're not always going to be aware of people's reactions. Sometimes you think one reaction is going to go one way and it doesn't. So really leaning on your support system, the people that are supportive there, and having some conversations beforehand, I think is important if possible. It's not always possible. And I think one thing that I also love to focus on in regards to these topics with sessions that I've had, specifically with family, sometimes what I've gathered from family members is there's not this level of rejection, but there's this level of fear, of not understanding, of not being educated, of being afraid now for your child that just came out, right? Where it's not that I'm rejecting you, but I'm afraid now because you're living in this world full of stigma. And so oftentimes families don't know how to communicate that. And so that comes off as like, let's just not talk about it at all, right? And so
where their intentions may be well-intentioned and concerned,
right,
and somewhat protective,
right,
it comes across as rejection in some ways. Yeah,
I think it's also important because there is a level of validation in parents or family members that is needed at times to say, they're also grieving, right? Some type of loss of something during this time frame, right? The person that's going through this obviously is going to be, the person that's feeling all these emotions, but family members often are grieving certain things, right? Like, will my child ever, have children? Or whatever I pictured, I pictured my daughter walking down the aisle in her wedding dress, and now that's not something that might or might not be possible, right? I'm just giving very random examples.
Well, it's true. Coming out is a process, and so we sometimes unrealistically expect our family members to be okay in a 2-minute conversation,
right,
when it's taken somebody their entire life to be able to actually just come out of the closet and say who they are and what they want out of their life. And so it is somewhat unrealistic on the queer person as well to expect for everything to just be like we said, a Hallmark movie.
Right.
The minute they come out of the closet, it's a little bit more difficult. So, their intentions may be well-intentioned and concerned,
right,
and somewhat protective.
Right.
It comes across as rejection in some ways. Yeah.
I think it's also important because there is a level level of validation in parents or family members that is needed at times to say, you know, they're also grieving, right? Some type of loss of something during this time frame, right? The person that's going through this obviously is going to be, you know, the person that's feeling all these emotions, but family members often are grieving certain things, right? Like, will my child ever, you know, have children, or whatever I pictured, you know, I pictured my daughter walking down the aisle in her wedding dress, and now that's not something that might or might not be possible, right? I'm just giving very random examples.
No, but it's true. You know, coming out is a process, and so we sometimes unrealistically expect our family members to be okay in a 2-minute conversation,
right,
when it's taken somebody their entire life to be able to actually just come out of the closet and say who they are and what they want out of their life. And so it is somewhat unrealistic on the queer person as well to expect for everything to just be like we said, a Hallmark movie.
Right.
The minute they come out of the closet, it's a little bit more difficult than that.
I have a question in regards to the dynamic for culture as Mexicans, because, you know, we're queer on that. It's kind of like that spin where as Mexicans, kind of our family's in everything.
Yes.
And when you're like, okay, we know this, and it's like, okay, you're feeling this way, I really just, how do you advise them to be like, I need some space to find what's going on with me, you know, kind of thing. Because even that, everyone knows everything, you know, the cousin of the cousin and so is told me.
Your Thea already found out because mom called her 2 hours ago, and it's acceptable, right? So I would say learning and identifying and building healthy boundaries. And if you're not aware of what healthy boundaries look like, look it up. Look up healthy boundaries, because I think that in certain cultures, right, not just ours, but so many, you know, what is healthy, you know, is not necessarily deemed as normal. You're disrespectful. How dare you not, you know, tell mom everything that happened? How are you not telling your Thea everything? She deserves to know. She's your aunt, you know, and that's how she is. So you tolerate certain things,
You answer her calls, and you answer her questions.
You're not feeling well, you still answer the phone, regardless of that, you know. So I think identifying healthy boundaries. If I am essentially not being true to myself, that's going to come up later. And you usually feel it within your body. We do a lot of body scanning on where do you feel it? Where does it come up for you? You know, it's usually, you know, in your stomach, in your throat, where you feel this sense of discomfort. And if it's there, it's obliging, understanding it, like something's up here. And with healthy boundaries, healthy communication go hand in hand, because there's a difference between stop asking me, I want nothing to do with you anymore after this relationship has been this way for, you know, 30 years. Right. Or, you know what, I'm getting to a point where I am working on myself. And that's it. You know, that would be enough. It might not be accepted right away. And that's also important with healthy boundaries, that we work a lot during the therapeutic process, where what does a boundary, a healthy one, look like, right? And then what should I expect reaction-wise, right? Because if someone is able to do something for a very long time and then you tell them, no, you can't do that anymore, what are some reactions that we're going to see?
They're not going to be happy.
They're not. And it's okay. It's okay. And it's working through being okay with that, and then dealing with the guilt of that, because then the person will feel like, oh my God, I'm bad, I'm wrong. You know, now I upset mom and it's all my fault. And so really anticipating, I tell people it's not about feeling these things. We're not going to learn how to not be stressed. We're not going to learn, you know, we're going to learn how to deal with these emotions in the healthiest ways, so that you can still set your boundaries. You can still understand that it's not going to be comfortable. It gets comfortable. That it will. It does over time, and that might take a long time, depending on that family dynamic, right? But it does a lot of the times work out very well. We're just afraid to get started on it, right? We just figure, like, I'll just do the same thing I've always been doing, and I'm going to stop feeling anxiety, and I'm going to stop feeling pressure, and I'm going to stop feeling, but the reactions and the behaviors actually go with the symptoms. So if you want to get rid of those symptoms, or at least get them to a place where they're tolerable, we want to do the hard stuff, which is, it's not, and you know, I tell people we want to take accountability and responsibility for where we're at. Most of the time we're there not from our own doing. Like, you know, it's not our fault that's how the generational, you know, trauma's there. It's not our fault that that's how the boundaries, that's just the way it's always been. But what is my role? And that's such an empowering thing. Where am I at? What's my role, and what can I do about it right now? Right? And there's usually always, you know, I'm not going to say always, but there's usually something that we can do to say, wait a minute, I do have a responsibility to myself, right? Because no one's going to take care of me the way that I need to take care of myself. I have accountability in this, and that gives me power. No one can take that from you.
Let's talk about somebody that is introducing their partner for the first time in a family gathering. that's a stressful thing.
Yeah.
Whether you're heterosexual, homosexual, or anything in between, it's always difficult.
It's true,
It is difficult.
Yeah.
I think that from personal experience, I think that that queer people probably experience that a little bit more. Because there's their own acceptance tied into it, not just the
Correct.
other person. You know, if you know that you love somebody and you say, well, I love them and that's all that matters, and that's ideally all that really does matter.
Right.
But there's also some acceptance tied into accepting me also means accepting my boyfriend or
Correct.
girlfriend.
Correct.
So how do you work that? How do you prepare yourself for that type of situation?
I think the first thing to focus on is the relationship. So let's have a conversation about what that's going to feel like and look like for us, so that we're walking in there together and really have an understanding with each other.
A united front.
A united front. And you know what? I think too, like, that's that support system. Like, if we're ready to go, let's have like it's ready to go type of situation. I don't think it needs to be that dire for every situation, but if you're going in there with the understanding of like, hey, you know, my aunt or my uncle might make comments, or this might happen, you know, in really extreme circumstances, or if you're uncomfortable, then we'll both leave together. I think that's important to have that first, because then you're not feeling isolated with all these feelings and emotions, and your partner has no idea what's going on, right? I think that would be a good tip to have also. And I think, again, having expectations and healthy boundaries from your family members. And if you're able to start identifying what those are going to look like and having those conversations, it's still going to be stressful, right? I tell people all the time, we're not going to remove the stress and the anxiety of it. We have to still do it anxious. We have to do it scared, right? These symptoms don't go away first. We're not going to get to a point where I'm not scared of this anymore. I'm just going to get to a point where I'm going to do it scared anyway, and really be able to identify healthy coping skills while I'm there. And so if that means I'm going to have a conversation maybe with my immediate family, with my brothers or my siblings, or, you know, my cousins that I'm closer to, just so that they can kind of be that support system while we're there, or really set healthy expectations and boundaries of the family members that you feel are important to have those that are open to have those conversations with.
And I also think about when you mention anxiety and those kinds of things. I also think about what good advice would be for coping mechanisms that you might recommend as you're approaching these conversations, or approaching these gatherings, or approaching the holidays in general. And understanding also that, in my mind, I also think the holidays are very tied into religious fervor, and that brings with it a whole other set of rules and dogma and things like that. So as you're preparing to go through all of these different nuances, what kind of coping mechanisms or self-talk do you recommend? So
one of the first things that I like to tell people, and we're going to go back here, right, is we can't really deal with anxiety. We have to feel our way out of anxiety. Anxiety is literally your body telling you, it's an alarm system saying something's wrong. And for many of us, it gets so bad that it's telling you that you're going to die. Right? And that's a wonderful system to have when we're in situations where that danger is possible. But it really doesn't feel good when we're sitting trying to study, or we're sitting at work and these alarm systems are going off, or you're getting ready to go to the holidays with your family and these alarm systems are going off. So the first thing that we need to do is tell our body that it's okay. We need to teach it that it's all right. And how do we do that? We do that by moving our body. I know it's those things that we always talk about. Yeah. Moving your body is essential. I don't care how you move it, just moving it, right? Getting up and walking 15 minutes, identifying healthy breathing techniques. A lot of these things you really can Google online and find just very, simple breathing techniques. And there's great apps available that teach you these different types of rhythmic breathing, or even the exercises themselves, right? I always tell people we don't need to join a gym and start doing CrossFit, guys. We can simply just go and walk, right? Outside is even better because there's a lot of your senses being used, right? So mindfulness techniques are all about the here and now, feeling my body where it's at right now. And so there's very simple things that we can do that, taking a walk outside and identifying things that I can see, things that I can hear, things that I can smell, right? Really taking in being outside and in nature if you're able to. What we put in our body, right? So I tell people all the time, if I'm anxious, I probably don't want to put things like nicotine or alcohol in my body because it's like drinking anxiety. It's drinking depression, right? So if I'm an anxious person, maybe I don't do decaf stuff instead of coffee. It's the real simple, small things that we don't think make a big difference that really, really do. When it comes to the religious aspect of it, I think that there does have to come a place, that we want to look at it and say, the belief systems that I have are what I can control, and the belief systems of others I cannot. Right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that we cannot sit and be respectful towards one another, and that the expectation is that I'm respected, right?
Yes.
But truly all I can do is control what mine looks like, and I can't control what yours looks like. And so I do agree with you that that's a big aspect in general when we're talking about the coming out process, or what families are going to think, or traditions and everything else. And so it could be, either a conversation, and it doesn't have to be. That can be a boundary where my religion is mine and I don't choose to talk about what that looks like for me. However, I respect yours, and I'm going to ask and set a boundary that you respect mine. I have people all the time tell me, I just want to be normal, like handle things the way everybody else does. And I'm like, well, I don't know what. We're all in this together trying to figure it out, right? So
Yes.
I 100% agree with you. It's okay to not go to the thing.
Right.
We've done it every single year, and everybody goes, and how are you not going to go? Because
Right.
I don't feel well going, and I'm going to listen to my body, and I'm not going to go to the thing. Whatever that is, right?
Right.
And
No,
during
absolutely.
the holidays, it's, the parties, and we're doing this, and, and so it's okay to not go. Right? It's also okay to go and say, I'm going to spend this much time here, and I am going to take a walk outside. I am going to maybe go off on my own for a little bit and really allow myself to process feelings and emotions. If we wake up first thing in the morning, the first thing naturally as human beings, what happens is we start automatically thinking of all of our stressors as things we have to do and things we're upset about, right? I'm late. I'm going to run late. This is going to, I have so much to do. If we wake up in the morning and say, these are the 3 things that I'm really grateful for today. These are the 3 things that I really want to let go of today, whether that was stuff that happened yesterday, I'm here today now, right? And if we start looking mindset-wise, that first thing in the morning, it really does help you throughout the day, because as soon as you start kind of going into a different mind space, you will remember, your brain will take you back to, hey, remember you said you wanted to let go of that today, so you want to spend too much time focusing on that, right? It's not getting rid of these emotions, we want to process them. We want to give these thoughts the space that they want. With intrusive or irrational thoughts, right? People say, just don't want to have these thoughts. And I say, no, have them, embrace them, find out why they're there, because that's how they're eventually going to go
Just
away.
don't let them drive you.
Yes. We just don't want to give them our whole day. We don't want to give them all of the space, right? And it's the same thing with gratefulness, right? If you can identify just 3 things, and they can be anything, right? They're very personal. It really does drive the rest of your day. It helps.
Well, on that note, we
Yes.
are very grateful for
Oh,
you.
thank you so much.
We have been talking to Lupita Peña with Emergence Health. She has spent her time talking to Queer on El Paso, and we thank you and wish you a happy holiday season.
Thank you so much. Such an honor.
After
Thank
our
you,
talk with
guys.
Lupita, we of course had to add in our 2 cents.
The majority of us know that our parents or our family love us, but they may not love us the way we envision that love. And so we have to cut them some slack too, because it's not easy for somebody that isn't really familiar with you or your lifestyle or what to say, what not to say. A lot of times, sometimes people offend us without even really realizing it.
Sure, yeah, and I watch myself that I'm not too sensitive as well. That I don't automatically assume somebody's out to insult me or to say something homophobic to me. Sometimes they do say things just as they say a lo stupido.
Yeah.
And because they're family, we need to give them the benefit of that doubt, but also to be a little more lax about, who we are. We're trying to make, again, that these worlds meet. We're
Right.
matching our worlds.
That, and also don't look for conflict. I think sometimes, particularly with my siblings, my brothers, more than anything else, I'll admit that sometimes my trigger was, very thin, and I was ready to fight. I was ready to pull off my wig and take off my earrings and go to town. But, luckily it never came to that.
Yeah, and I know that I'm, quite the sensitive plant, and so I've been like seething in my mind, going, she said that just to get at me. I know what she meant.
Yeah.
There could have been nothing meant by it, by whatever statement was said, but there I was, ready to be insulted
Yeah,
and
well,
hurt, and
I've met your family. They meant.
marginalized.
I met your family. They meant it.
Yeah,
No, I'm playing.
very true. That's the reason why I was sensitive.
Yeah, I would have been at that family gathering, and my wig would have been off a lot sooner. Let me tell you that. I would have gone to town with your sisters. I'll tell you that.
Oh yes.
No, your family, and I think actually, I think both of our families are. Interestingly enough, Izzy and I come. We grew up a block away from each other, and that's not where the similarities end. I mean, I think that culturally and I know that socioeconomically, we had very similar experiences, not identical but similar, and so I think we've always at a younger age kind of saw that in each other. That like I knew how to deal with Izzy's father, and I think Izzy knew how to deal with mine because there was some familiarity there. And so I think that growing up, particularly in the Lower Valley in El Paso, Texas in the 1980s, the world was very different. And in a lot of ways, it was a lot harsher, but we were a lot tougher.
Absolutely, and I'm kind of glad that I did get that tougher edge. It was difficult to deal with, but I am much. I think because I was such a sensitive plant, I am much stronger. I'm able to let a lot of those things roll off my back now because the words and the barbs and things like that came from our Lower Valley upbringing. They gave you a tough skin, whether you wanted to or not.
Right, and I think that particularly when you're younger, but you do have a tendency to internalize everything. And one of the things Lupita talks about is, it's probably just their issues and not ours. But we go to family gatherings almost walking into it expecting it to be about us. And you don't stop and pause for a moment and say, you know what, that's her issue or that's his issue. And once I started doing that, particularly when it came to my own father, and I thought, man, that guy's dealing with some demons over there, it made my life a little bit more, put it into more perspective. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, far be it for any gay people to be a little self-centered.
Exactly. I was actually more concerned about my outfit than anything else. But I mean, I'm not saying I'm self-centered. I mean, but yeah. The thing is that we do kind of. I know that I almost instinctively wanted to make things about me and my life, and I didn't stop and just open up my mind a little bit to say this is really about the entire family, and sometimes it's pretty messed up.
And I think that's natural. I think it's completely natural that at some point everyone is like, why are they being this way? And then you think, what did I do? And it's very easy to forget that they have their own lives, that we're seeing them for the first time in what might have been a year. It's been since last Thanksgiving that you saw them, and who knows what has gone on, and their daily dealings, and it's not always about us. But it's easy to be like, well, their phone works too, and those kinds of things.
I think it's natural family dynamic that you kind of come armed with this arsenal of emotional bombs,
right?
That you either have to duck and cover from, or that you throw. And I've thrown some myself in my day out of anger and out of drunkenness sometimes, But yeah, I mean, and when you start to look at things in terms of it's not all about you, that's healthy, I think, to look at it from that perspective. But sometimes you do have to draw boundaries in what you think is acceptable for you. What is an acceptable comment? What is an acceptable space for you to be comfortable in your own family? And setting those boundaries is probably the best thing that we can do for ourselves.
Absolutely, and I think that deciding what those boundaries are beforehand. So I think that one of the things in introspection, as you're developing, who you are as a gay person, is to decide what will I and won't I put up with, and what is a line that I don't want to have crossed, so that you're ready when it happens instead of reacting. Because reaction is where you get into the battles and where you throw smoke bombs and where you get into why holidays are so fraught with controversy and for lack of a better term, anti behavior.
Right. And and of course, the whole point of Thanksgiving is to be grateful. And so to kind of power through those emotional minds that we have to kind of tiptoe over, and to get to a place of gratitude, I think, is just good advice for anybody, whether they're LGBTQ or whatever else there is out there. I mean, I think that I think that gratitude is certainly a good place to start, and that's really what Thanksgiving is all about. But sometimes, there are things that you just have to kind of you take umbrage at, and if I see my sister-in-law wearing white shoes one more time to Thanksgiving dinner, I might just punch her out. I mean, that's just the way it is.
And finding joy in the fact that you have such a better fashion sense than others, can be motivating as well.
Well, at least it makes me feel better about me. It's a Queer Onda Thanksgiving, and so we've put together some inspirational thoughts and quotes that we've gathered on Pinterest for your amusement.
May none of your real feelings slip out at Thanksgiving dinner.
I'm thankful to have a family who takes eating as seriously as I do.
Thanksgiving is all about getting your entire dysfunctional family under the same roof and hoping the police don't get called.
Cranberries without vodka? Must be Thanksgiving.
This year's Thanksgiving dinner seating chart will be based on political party.
Chocolate comes from cocoa, which is a tree that makes it a plant. Chocolate is a salad. You're welcome.
Be thankful for what you have. Your life, no matter how bad you think it is someone else's fairy tale.
This Thanksgiving, I'm going to stop eating as soon as I get full. Said no one ever.
Join us each month as we address issues facing the LGBTQ plus community. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at feedback@queeronda.com or visit our website and leave a comment. www.queeronda.com. That's www.queeronda.com.
Next episode will be dropping the 15th of next month. And until then, agarren la onda, queers.